Okay, I think I'm live. So if somebody could just indicate that they're hearing me, that would be helpful. I'll wait just a half minute or so to let other people join in. These are always a little bit difficult to do because, again, I have to kind of monitor everything here, and there's about a 10 or 15-second delay. So let's just pray that everything goes okay tonight. I did announce it in advance. It seems like when I announce things in advance. So tonight I'm going to talk about, I'm going to title this Midweek Update, New World Disorder. I'm only going to touch on very briefly a couple of topics. I really could go 4 hours with all the things that are going on this week. Some of the things center around Jerusalem, which we know in Zechariah says will be a cup of trembling. Things are really heating up. So let me just advance I'm trying a different thing with my slides tonight. We talk about the convergence of events, acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. I'm going to try to keep this to 20 minutes because I know everybody has things to do. It's beautiful weather here in Ohio, by the way. It's very unusual. We've had a very wet winter, not much snow. Last week, a golf course just a few miles away from us was closed because of flooding for a couple days. This week, I'm getting notices on my app that there's a risk of fire. So it's absolutely crazy weather. I will be in Calgary, Canada. I know I say this a lot. I'll be in Calgary, Canada, May 5th and 6th. Then we're going to be probably traveling around the West a little bit. Then I'm also going to be in Scotland for a conference with Moriel. You can go to moriel.org and find that out. About that conference, that's June 16th to 18th. I may also be doing some other things while I'm in the UK and England and Scotland. So just pray for the logistics of all those things to come together. We are at this time, I think we're going to find things a little bit in terms of exactly how the Bible prophecies are going to play out. We're going to find that they're a little bit easier to understand. But right now, everything is in the Middle East, everything is heating up. Now, I'm going to share with you an article that I came across the other day. I saw it on Israel 365 News. I think Amir Sarfati did an update about it, and I think it's a pretty important article. It's an article by Mordecai Kedar. Now, Dr. Kedar is a very well-respected Middle East expert. He may be in Israel at the top of understanding the Israeli-Arab conflict and also understanding how Muslims think. So I almost got to meet Dr. Kedar at the media summit. First, I didn't know he was going to be there, and I was standing there at a reception they had for us the first night talking to someone, and then I turned and started talking to a gentleman who had quit his conversation with somebody else, and Dr. Kedar's name came up, and this man from the UK who's now a friend of mine, he said, "So I'd love to meet Dr. Kedar." He says, "Well, he was just standing behind you for 15 minutes and you didn't meet him." So I have tremendous respect for him. He is in his thinking about how does Israel resolve things with the Arabs, he's one of the only people that I really have seen that have looked at things and said, listen, the Arab society, the Palestinian society, is a tribal society. And so you need to almost to divide the Palestinians into emirates, sort of like the United Arab Emirates did. That's essentially the United Arab Emirates are 7 sheikdoms that have come together to form a country. Then they vote on who's going to be the president and the different offices that they have. So the guy who's the head sheikh from Abu Dhabi is the president of the United Arab Emirates. And Dubai is more of a business city, so they're influential in that as well. But Qatar has taken that model and said, look, if they're ever going to try to get any kind of peace in this region, they're going to have to take the model and divide the Palestinians up into their different tribes. So you have the tribes up from around Nazareth and that sort of thing. That would be where I'm pretty sure Mahmoud Abbas, the current president of the Palestinian Authority, he's now serving, I think, the 13th year of his 4-year term that he was elected to many years ago. They just haven't had elections. You have the people in Gaza. You have the tribal region down around Hebron and some other areas, and you need to almost divide them into those tribal regions because you're never going to get them to agree. And a lot of what we see right now with the unrest in the, I don't like the term Palestinian, but I'll call them Palestinians because that's what everybody tells them, in the Palestinian society is part of what's going on is they're vying for power within the Palestinian people. So right now what's happening is that the more extreme factions are engaging in terrorist attacks and that type of thing. And these terrorist attacks are a big deal. There was in fact, the funeral, why did that not, there we go. The funeral of these two daughters who were killed in the Jordan Valley in a terrorist attack the other day. They were just driving down the highway, and I've seen the video, and the car, I think it's pretty clear the car saw the car. They circled back around because they were checking to make sure that these were Jews. They wanted to kill Jews. This was right after Friday prayers. They shot and killed them. I believe that one daughter died at the scene. There was a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old. They're sisters. There was a family of 7. There were 4 girls, a boy, father, and mother. The mother was also injured. She passed away a couple days ago. But you can go to YouTube, and I think I would recommend that you do this. You can go to YouTube. I know Caroline Glick on her Twitter account had posted the link to the funeral, and watch the funeral service of these 2 young women. Yishai Fleischer, who I know, who's the head of the official spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron, and I think he's also Ben Gavir's main English language translator. He's the sort of controversial minister. Yishai posted about the 2 girls before the mother had passed away. She passed away after the funeral. Yishai posted about what had happened to these 2 girls. And I have to tell you, if you don't believe that humanity is one of the darkest places that it's ever been, go find Yishai Fleischer's Twitter account, or I posted on my Facebook page, I think, a link to it, and read the comments of the people. These girls deserve to die. They were colonialist invaders. They were taking over the country. One of them had served in the IDF, and they're stealing Palestinian land. It's just, the comments were so vile. It's very depressing to watch this. But the mother died, and you can see the father. He's a rabbi. They're from the UK. It's just absolutely heartrending. I mean, when you've been to this community, they lived in Efrat, and I had Shabbat dinner with the Fleischers when I was in Israel in December. It's a wonderful community, and a lot of people that we know from Israel, different people, they live down in Efrat. Some of the people in social media and journalism and that type of thing, and it's a wonderful community. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Efrat in my talk in Canada, because one of the verses I'm going to use, I'm going to talk about prophecies regarding the first coming of Messiah. And it says, behold, Bethlehem Ephrata. This is the area. Efrat, the community of Efrat right now, is located between Bethlehem and Hebron. And it's just heart-rending. I know that as we were going to the Fleischers for dinner that night, we passed a shopping center at the Gush Etzion Junction there near where the different condominiums and that type of thing that make up Efrat are located. And I recognized the shopping center because that's where a very unique individual named Ari Fold had been murdered about 4 years before. And I remember it popped up on my Facebook feed on my way to church on a Sunday morning, and it was Avi Abelo, who I met when I was in Jerusalem on this trip in the Jewish Quarter. I just saw him walking down the street, but I remember him being at the Wailing Wall saying that Ari Fold was dead. And I don't remember if Ari Fold was a Facebook friend of mine or I followed him, but he was just sort of this larger-than-life guy. And what had happened at this shopping center, he went down there to get something for his wife. His wife said, go down and get something at the store. And while he was at the store, he was talking on his phone. A young Canaanite, Arab, whatever you want to call him, guy came up and stabbed him in the back. Ari fell down. The guy started running, and Ari jumped up and chased him. He was an IDF reserve soldier. Shot him in the back shot him and killed him. And then as soon as he had shot and killed him, Ari collapsed. When he was stabbed, it had severed his aorta, but he still had the mind to go after the terrorist and neutralize the terrorist. But it's just an incredible, it's just heart-rending. And I remember Ari Fold's funeral, his daughter, his wife, his son talking at the funeral, his brothers, his father talking at the funeral. I think Ari and his wife had been born in the same hospital 24 hours within 24-hour period in New York City before they met Aliyah. And these stories are just heartrending. You can see the bodies. You see the sisters here in this picture at the Guardian, the sisters weeping and crying and hugging their dead sisters. And then they had the funeral for their mother. So this is really what's going on. This is heating up. So Dr. Kedar, in an article, this is where I started. This is Dr. Kedar in an article in a Hebrew language online newspaper, wrote this article. And I get a number of people have talked about it, and I just want to look at it. So what I've done is in the show description, after this video is over, you can go to the description of the video, and I've posted, unusual for me, I know, I've posted about 4 or 5 links, and you can go to the article. Now, this one, you almost have to copy the URL, go to Chrome, paste it in Chrome, and then you can go in the upper right-hand corner of the address bar. You can click on English, and it will translate to English. But Dr. Kedar, who is just a fantastic analyst, and based on some of the things that he's been talking about with people in Israel, has this article, and it's titled "This: A Combined Attack from Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and Gaza, and Inside Israel, the Doomsday Scenario." Caroline Glick on Sunday night after the funeral of these girls in Efrat, which she attended, because that's where she lives, she mentioned in her update that Israel was really on the verge of a 6-front war. It would include Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, internal Palestinian, internal Israel, and Iran. I think it's a 6-front. And people that are in the know over there right now, defense people that I've been in contact with, are very concerned about the situation right now and what is going to be done, because Iran is clearly using the holiday season to ramp things up. And in fact, in an article, in fact, if you would look at the Tehran Times, which is dated today, this is the Tehran Times. I want to make sure I got the date right. This is for Quds Day 2023. Blood wins over bullet. And what do you see there is it's essentially a message from the Ayatollah Khomeini saying blood wins over bullets. And you see a picture of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You see the outline of the nation of Israel. And understand, when they look at Israel, they don't see Israel in the West Bank or the Palestinian area. They see one country, and it's not called Israel. In fact, in this article, or in this newspaper. It's only 4 pages long. You can go to the TehranTimes.com website and download it. You see a message from the Ayatollah Khamenei saying, Israel wants to leave sooner. On the right-hand side, International Quds Day, Israel in fear. Wrong state and possibility of its continuity. Blood wins over bullets. So what the Ayatollah Khamenei says in this article, which you can read, he says, listen, we had said that within the next 25 years, he said this a couple years ago, within the next 25 years, Israel was going to disappear. The Zionist entity would disappear. And so that's what he said. We had said, I guess it was 2015. We had said in 2015 that they would not see 25 years from them, but they themselves are in a rush and want to leave sooner because they're looking at the internal situation in Israel. And so they think that this may be the opportunity that they have to attack. Nasrallah has come out in the last day or so, and he has said something to that effect. Now, look, this is all propaganda from the Ayatollah. Nobody believes this. Look at the last page of this. And again, what's important to look at is the imagery. Again, Al-Aqsa, the Dome of the Rock, is emphasized. I might have said that was Al-Aqsa. That's not Al-Aqsa. That's the Dome of the Rock. And then here, unity is the key to victory, the last page of that newspaper. And you see the shadowy figure of General Soleimani, who was killed in the strike by President Trump in January of 2020. And again, you see the quotes from people down the left side of the page. So this is what they're looking at. And even in the bottom, you can kind of see that they're chasing this dog. Let me see if I can expand this out. Here we go. You see the cartoon here in the center bottom. You see the Dome of the Rock in the back. You see buildings of Gaza. You see Palestine. And you see them chasing the Jewish dog away. Very offensive imagery that they use. So let's get rid of that. So a lot of this centers around the Temple Mount. And Kadar's article, which I'll go back to here, talks about the situation that Israel is facing. It is a very dicey situation. So this, just look at what Kadar says. And again, I would highly recommend copy the URL, go to Chrome, click on English, translate it. A note to my dear readers. I hesitated quite a bit whether to publish the things that appear below because of the panic that they might cause in Israel. However, in the Middle East environment, and in particular in Iraq, these things are known and serve as a topic of open discussion among quite a few, and therefore it is impossible for the public in Israel not to be aware of them as well. And in particular, these things concern them, his security and existence, much more than they concerned the citizens of Iraq. In addition, these things come up from time to time in the Israeli media, so I decided to bring them up here. A source I have known for years, an expatriate from the Middle East, a supporter of Israel who lives in Europe and is in constant contact with people in Iran and Iraq, conveyed to me their assessment that Iran is planning to launch a combined attack on Israel in the foreseeable future that will include all of the forces at its disposal in Arab countries. They talk about Lebanon. They talk about Hezbollah and Hamas with many thousands of missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, some of them accurate. It's estimated that combined among these Arab countries, these parties that want to attack Israel, they have about 250,000 rockets. They estimate that if they launched enough of them, that they could deplete all of the Iron Dome defenses in a very short order. And understand that they've always had multiple, a very high ratio. I don't know if it's a high ratio or low ratio. For example, with some of their better missiles, they have launchers. And in many cases, they have 2 missiles per launcher, which means they could unleash a lot of them at once. this would cause massive chaos and casualties, particularly in northern Israel. Now, the rockets are not that accurate, but this is what Kadar is hearing, is that Iran is getting ready to do this. And as I showed you the newspaper from the Tehran Times, that they're talking about could stay. So that's tomorrow. I don't know that anything's going to happen. I'm not saying that that Iran's going to do something. I'm just saying is that a lot of people that I follow, that I talk to, are very concerned about where this is going in Israel. Now, a lot of this relates to the Temple Mount. I talked a bit about this on Sunday. Let me get over to my slides here. I talked about the Temple Mount on Sunday. I talked about the different theories about the location of the temple, and then that's going to be the subject of a portion of one of my talks that I'm going to do in Canada in about 4 weeks. But there's a number of locations. So you're sitting here, you're looking, you can see the Dome of the Rock. What the Muslims have done is they have taken the whole area and they're calling it Al-Aqsa. It used to be called Harim al-Sharif. In fact, I don't know if I have it sitting here on my, hang on a second here. Okay, so I have a publication. You can get this. I know Randall Price used to sell it. This is a reprint. It's called Haram al-Sharif. Al-Haram al-Sharif. It's a guide. It's published by the Waqf, the WAQF, the Waqf, the Islamic holy leader that's in the Middle East. It is, and you can look in here. Here's a picture of the Hajj Aman el-Husseini, who was appointed by the British as the guy who's going to be in charge of the Temple Mount. There is some evidence, I think, that this man, he worked with Hitler to eradicate Jews. He spent time in Nazi Germany working with Hitler on a solution to the Jewish problem. He used to foment a lot of problems. There was a huge massacre of Jews. I think there were 70 or 80 killed, and a massacre in Hebron back in 1928 or 29. And what the Hajj Aman el-Husseini said at that time was that the Jews were going to take over the Temple Mount, the Haram al-Sharif. It was bad enough that Jews essentially fled Jerusalem at that time, and then there was this massacre of about 70 or 80, I think it was 70 Jews down in Israel. And that you can actually find at the Times Machine, the old New York Times, you can find the articles that were written about that at the time. And the pictures are just absolutely horrific. There is some evidence that this guy, the Hajj, Aman el-Husseini, he was called the Hajj because he had made a pilgrimage to Mecca, which Muslims are supposed to do once in his life, that he also was close to a man in Iraq, and they each had a nephew. I'm still trying to dig out. I had this all nailed down at one point, and I'm pretty sure my memory is correct. But the Hajj Aman Husseini had a nephew, or it appears he had a nephew, a guy named Yasser Arafat, an Egyptian, who came to lead the Palestinian people. And he died back in, 2003 or 2004. Thank you, somebody. What I need to do is I need to, thank you. I didn't realize that my screen was taking up all the pictures. So then I have to stop this screen. Hang on. Okay, so here's the book. Sorry about that. Thank you for pointing that out in the comments. A helpful comment. They happen every now and then. This is the book, Haram al-Sharif, You can get reprints of it. This is one from 1924. And there are different ministries that sell them. And so in this, you'll see a picture of the Hajj Aman al-Husseini, who was the Muslim holy man in charge. There's currently a guy who's the Muslim Waqf in Jerusalem. He's an imam who's in charge of the Temple Mount. He is subject to the Jordanian government authority. But it's very interesting in this publication. This is back in 1924. This is before Israel. I think it's on page 8. I don't have it teed up here, so I will. It says very clearly that there is no question but that this is the site of Solomon's temple. I know I've put it in my presentations before, so but they say this, that there is no question that that the Dome of the Rock is built on the site of Solomon's temple. And that's their own words. That's their own guide. That changed about 1967. I'm going to explain to you a little bit very briefly why that changed or how that changed. And I first became aware of this, and there's other people who've done this, but Dr. Mordecai Kadar did an article. Now I got to go back to share my screen. Just give me 1 second here. Come on. There we go. I seem to use up all of the bandwidth that there's a little phrase that pops up here and says, "Oh, are you having issues?" Yeah, I'm always having issues with you, StreamYard. I'm going to have to get a different service. So I've put a link in the show notes below. And it looks like my video is now frozen up. Hopefully you'll be able to follow the audio. So I'll tell you what, I'm just going to shut this down and I'll talk about it. Because I think I'm using up all my bandwidth with StreamYard. And I'm trying to figure out how to stream on our app. So let me just shut down some of these things and maybe my video will take up. So Mordecai Kadar back in 2008 did an article that appeared at Ynet News called The Myth of Al-Aqsa. And what he did was he went through and he looked at the historical Islamic sources, their own material, and he said that what they say happened at the Temple Mount did not happen at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, that the farthest mosque in Islamic history, there's this myth that Muhammad went to the Haram al-Sharif Temple Mount area, and that's where he ascended to heaven from a rock that's now under the Dome of the Rock. That's a myth. The farthest mosque was really located near Mecca, down in Saudi Arabia. And then that was picked up on in 2020. There were a couple articles. There was one that appeared in the Morocco World, and I put the link in the show notes. And you can read that article, and they say the same thing. And then Israel Hayom picked up on it, and I think Israel Hayom published the article in November of 2020. So that's what's going on. So what's going on at the Temple Mount is they're trying to foment things. Netanyahu's government released a video about what really went on at Al-Aqsa. You can find that at Benjamin Netanyahu's Twitter feed. And I will play the video on Sunday. And so Kadar, as he said in his article, there's a great concern that there's going to be something may be happening in the next couple of days. And I think things in Israel are very tense. I've heard that the IDF has canceled all leaves. They've called up reservists. And the question is, what are they going to be able to do? And at the same time that this is happening, you have all these other factors. You have relationships developing. You have the Saudi, I think it's kind of a fake accord between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudis are just being very practical, but there's a lot of concerns about what happens if we decide to go forward on this. If everybody decides to go forward, what's Saudi's going to do? They won't let us do overflights. Azerbaijan has said you can't use our bases. And so how does Israel defend itself? How does it go after Iran? How does it fight on this multi-front war? Now, a few years back at the Herzliya conference, the head of the Israeli Air Force said, listen, what happened in 2006 was the second Lebanon war. And what happened in 2006 at the second Lebanon war was it took 35, I think it lasted 35, 38 days. And there was a lot of rockets fired back and forth. There was a lot of, Israel took over part of southern Lebanon that they still effectively control to this day. There's sort of a, quote, peacekeeping force there that doesn't really do much. But the Israeli Air Force guy said, listen, if we have to do something to get rid of the threat in Lebanon, you're going to see shock and awe. You're going to see in 48 to 72 hours what we saw in 38 days the last time. And it will be shock and awe like you've never seen. So the question is, can Israel do that? There were some reports today that Israel has reached out to the United States for support if Israel decides to go forward. Israel has a problem. There is a significant distance to Tehran and the nuclear sites that they may want to attack in Iran. They would have to get overflights. They need to have their jets refueled. Now, they have developed some external fuel tanks for the F-35s, but there's a logistical problem. I think that it's a very tense situation. I'm also looking at other things going on in the world. The dollar is dropping dramatically. People seem to be fleeing from the dollar. I mentioned Sunday that if the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency, which it seems to be well on its way to doing, it seems like the regime in charge in Washington wants to have that happen. Things will change dramatically for the United States. I've mentioned before, I'm not going to make any specific recommendations. You have to decide what's best for each of you and your families. But I think it would be extremely wise for people to go out and lay up some stores and do some preparation. There's threats of war. I've been tracking marine traffic, and I know some people disagree with my conclusions about marine traffic. But if you go to Shanghai Harbor, I'll put up a slide of this on Sunday. There are they have different categories of ships at marinetraffic.com that you can put into the you can click on them and they'll show up an outline of the ship or a dot. Red represents tankers, green represents cargo ships. And then there's this category that's just other, and it's gray. And I'm telling you that the sea outside of Shanghai is filled with thousands of gray ships that have turned off their transponders. This indicates to some people, I'm one of them, that shipping of goods from China is really being shut down. Is that being shut down in preparation of war? China keeps threatening Taiwan. There's a video that they've released about how they're going to take out Taiwan. So the dollar is going down. Russia's making threats against the West. You have the leaks of all these materials from the Pentagon that came out. I'm not sure what to make of them yet. What it's doing is it's causing a lot of people to lose all confidence in the United States. The reason why the dollar is the reserve currency is because they've had confidence in the United States. That is going away. What was the other thing that I saw? Oh, while all this is going on, Turkey came out and announced and said, hey, we found a bunch of gas in the Black Sea. Guess what? That's enough gas to supply all of Turkey's needs. They've already laid the pipeline from the gas fields to transport the gas to shore. Now, I don't know what rate they'll be able to transfer it, but they have indicated, and this may be a lot of hype because Erdogan is facing election in the next month. He's up for re-election. The parties that oppose him have united. Don't know how successful they'll be, but Erdogan has come out and said, hey, we've got enough gas to supply from this find all of Turkey's needs for 20 years. That includes industrial and everything. We can do everything with our own natural gas. It's a pretty significant development. Also, on one other thing, and I think I'll finish up with this. Michael Snyder at his Substack account, he's the Economic Collapse blog. He has put up an article that I can't remember the name of the organizations. It's you can go to michaelsnyder.substack.com and read it. It's about a new universal digital currency, central bank digital currency being put out by this central organization. That all of this is happening so quickly. So Sunday, I think that we're going to try to keep it to about 6 hours because there's just a big question. So here's one question. I'm just telling you, there's been billions of dollars transferred out of U.S. banks. I don't know what impact that's going to have. There's going to be a huge impact as commercial real estate gets priced into the banking system at its lower value. That's going to cause a lot of problems. There's so much going on in this space. The financial system is very precarious. Everything is very precarious. The situation in Israel, the situation in the Middle East, the situation in Taiwan, the situation in Ukraine, and then people losing confidence in the United States. It's really, really dicey. So check the show notes. I'll answer this one question here from Dove. Do you think that once they crash the U.S. dollar, the world will follow? I don't know if it's our people crashing the dollar or if it's other people crashing it. It appears that they're all working together to get rid of the U.S. dollar. Now, these things usually take a period of time. They can take years. For example, I think the percentage of reserve currency when it shifted from the British pound sterling to the U.S. dollar many decades ago, that took a decade. But we know that things don't happen. Things that used to take a decade happen in a week now. And I think that that's the way it's going to be until the Lord returns. I think it's going to be kind of head spinning, and it's going to be difficult to keep up with. I was just sort of looking through things today, and you can pray for me on this or pray that we figure out how to do this. I think that the people that I communicate with and I do shows with and that type of thing, we almost need to sort of develop a central clearinghouse. There's a lot of good sites out there that you can go to. I see Suzanne. I see someone here from Be Alert on Facebook. That's a good site where a lot of this news is posted. It's one that I follow. There's a bunch of others that I follow as well. I follow a lot of mainstream news. I follow a lot of think tanks and that type of thing. I would say that if you want to kind of get a feel for things in the Middle East, there's a couple out. There's one called CSIS. I can't remember the name of it offhand. let me see if I. Um, Let me see here. I'll get you the name. And you can email me if you want. Like Center for Strategic and International Studies. It's a think tank. They did a study many years ago. It's kind of interesting. Back in 2007, I've referred to it a number of times, where they looked at what happens if Iran and Israel get into a nuclear war. That's kind of an interesting topic. They were talking about this 16, 17 years ago, and now here we are. I also recommend that you follow Memory, the Middle East Media Research Institute, the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, uh, the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, and then there's the Institute for National Security Studies. I would say it's sort of in the Israeli elite, but they put out a strategic assessment of Israel about a month ago for 2023, and I think that that would be a good thing for you to download and read. Um, Again, that's international. I think it's inss.co.il is their website. And so there's a lot of information there that talk about Israel and the security situation in Israel. Again, I'm not sure I agree with their orientation on everything. Oh, I'm sorry, it's inss.org.il. There is a lot going on. So keep your head, keep in the word, keep your wits about you because you got to make some intelligent decisions, I think, in the weeks, months to come. So I will talk to you Sunday. Thanks for listening, and God bless.